Hey everybody, today's video is about training specifically for your event. I'm going to start by giving you an example of two different athletes I'm coaching. For both athletes, I'm focusing on tempo and sweet spot work right now. But with one athlete, I'm doing it with cadence around 50 RPMs, and the other athlete, I'm doing it with cadence 90 or above RPM. Okay, so why this big difference? Well, the first athlete is going to do a travel trip in the Dolomites. And on the last day, she has a 10-kilometer climb at 12% average. And that is crazy steep. And our goal is just to get her up that climb. Now, this was actually a little tricky because on her training bike, she has very short crank arms, but on this travel trip, she is renting a bike with longer crank arms. That is going to slow her cadence down. Luckily, we had another trip where she had rented a bike with the same crank arm length that she's going to be renting, and she did a grade similar to that 12%. So we were able to look at basically the minimum power to get her up the mountain and the associated cadence. And we found that it was around 50 RPMs at tempo, maybe dabbling into sweet spot at times. So now I'm training her for long stretches at that power and cadence combination. And this is very important. If I just trained her at the power, she might get to that climb and then she's forced to do lower cadence just because of the grade, and her body's not used to that. So we are training her specifically for what she is going to do. Now, the other athlete, the reason I'm training him at 90 RPM and above is because he focuses on criteriums and local group rides. And so that is not a low cadence activity. So I would assign him these sweet spot and tempo workouts. And every so often, I would notice that his cadence would drop and he would turn it into a more force workout. Now, I talked with him and I told him, you know what? You're building strength by doing this. That is fine. I'm actually okay with you doing low cadence sometimes, but we need to make sure that you can do the appropriate higher cadence, because in a race or a group ride, that is the cadence that is going to be ideal. So even though he had been training and doing slightly low cadence, when he went outside on his recent group rides or he did an indoor race, I did see that same power with a higher cadence combination for long periods of time. And then I knew, you know what? He's good. He is training what he needs to be training. It's okay if he's dabbling in the low cadence. He's going to get gains with that. And I know that he's competent and he can do the higher cadence when that demand comes. So those are two examples of basically training the same power, but for very different scenarios. So I want you to think about, what are your scenarios? What are you training for? And make sure that the training you're doing is going to match the real world riding you will do.